I'm going to show you how I make the chocolate sourdough using my simplified sourdough method. I will put a link to that simplified sourdough bread video in the description. I have pre-measured and weighed out all of the ingredients, so we're going to go through the process. The bread ingredients are bread flour, salt, chopped chocolate, and cocoa powder. You can use any type of chocolate you like, chopped up. It's 150 grams of chocolate. For the chopped chocolate in this bread, I am using almonds and sea salt. And this is a 72% cocoa dark chocolate. You can use any variety of chopped chocolate. I just recommend not using chocolate chips because they're bigger pieces, and the chopped chocolate allows you to chop it up a little finer. The biggest pieces that I would suggest would be about this. So that's 150 grams of chopped chocolate, 30 grams of cocoa powder, 500 grams of bread flour, 10 grams of salt, which I already have there, 360 grams of water, and I believe it's 100 grams of starter. This starter I took out of the refrigerator about a half an hour ago so that it'll be a little bit softer. And the new method, or my simplified method, is using it right out of the refrigerator because my starter is very active. So I'm using the scale here just to measure out the water. I always use warm water, not too hot. You don't want it too hot because you don't want to kill your starter. 360 grams of water. 100 grams of starter. And the nice thing about putting it in the water, which we talk about in the simplified method, is this gets everything dissolved, and I think it blends much nicer. All right, 100 grams of starter. You add the cocoa powder, 30 grams of cocoa powder. So I'm going to mix this all up. I don't need the scale because I've measured everything out. This will allow the cocoa powder to dissolve. I forgot to measure out the sugar, 50 grams of regular white sugar. So that gets added into the water, the starter, and the cocoa powder. And mixing it up until it is smooth. It's okay if it's still a little clumpy, but it's nice to go for having a nice smooth mixture here before you add in the flour. The chopped chocolate gets added in the folding and shaping after the dough has done the bulk fermentation. So we're going to add in the flour. I am a fan of a stick and a rounded bottom bench scraper to incorporate everything together. I just keep going around the top edge and bringing that flour and water starter mixture together. Then I bring in the bench scraper, start to scrape down the sides and get to the bottom, and then I just fold it over. I am not a fan of getting dough all over my hands. This is an easier cleanup without having the dough on your hands. So it's still a little shaggy there. This step is the autolyse step where we're getting, where we're getting everything moisturized. Everybody has to find their own way of their own method. This is now ready to sit for an hour to relax. Here's what it looks like. And as I've mentioned in other videos, this is my heated dome. This cake plate is on a waterproof heated pet mat. So it goes in here, have it on high, cover it up, and then we'll check back in an hour. It's been an hour. Let's check the dough. It looks nice. You can see there's still some dry spots in there. So we're going to do a series of folds and stretching, probably for about a minute or so. Using a wet hand, just going to pull it and fold it. I'm just going to pull and fold, keep wetting my hand. It's a beautiful color. Use the bench scraper, scrape down the sides of the bowl. It's a lovely chocolatey color. Sometimes I slap it just to force a little stretching. The experts would probably frown upon that. It's coming together beautifully. Still a lot of tension on there at this point. It's getting to the point where it's pretty stiff. So that's when I think it's kind of time to just let it rest. And we'll come back every 30 minutes and do the series of stretch and folds. So the cover goes back on. This is the first stretch and fold. The first two folds are typically a little softer, and you can see that it's still firm after the third fold. After each time, I like to round the dough using a wet hand. Kind of get the whole hand wet is helpful. I like to wet my hand and form a ball, a tighter ball. And then I'll do this 3 more times. We'll check back in on the 4th one. This is our last stretch and fold. And then we will do bulk fermentation. We're going to take the temperature of the dough. Nice. It's 79 degrees. I just went up to 80 as I went closer to the bottom of the bowl. So that is ideal for quicker bulk fermentation. Going to wet my hand. Look how nice and stretchy it is. It's softened way up. My hand again. Just going to smooth it into a ball. I'm going to cover it, and we are going to let it rest and ferment until it doubles in size. So I cover it with the dome, and I'm covering it with towels as well because it's very chilly outside at the moment, and this is a cool corner. So we'll check back in about an hour or so and see how it's doing. It's been several hours. Let's look at the dough. It looks very pretty. You can see it's jiggly. That's what you want. That means it has a lot of air and volume. So we're going to take this out and add in the chopped chocolate. I do like to put a little bit of flour down, not a lot. So I scrape it out of the bowl. I'm going to make a rectangle. I have the square edge and the rounded edge. The square edge I like to use on the surface. Does help for spreading. The goal here is to spread this chocolate on all of the folds. So we're spreading this on, and it's going to go on each fold. I'm trying to keep the amount of chocolate. And this is the coil fold. I'm going to press it down a little bit. Now, all this chocolate that's falling out, I'm going to just remove that. I've learned after baking other loaves of chocolate that the chocolate needs to be totally enclosed into the loaf. Otherwise, it burns while it's baking. So the chocolate needs to be completely enclosed into the dough. So we're going to do the spiral roll. Oh, the dough feels so nice. I'm going to get this chocolate out of the way, only because I've learned that this burns when it's on the outside of the dough. Just putting a little flour. You have to close up these rounded ends. I am going to do the resistance back to myself to make a tighter ball. So from this side, you can see that there's no chocolate sticking out. Get all the chocolate out of the way. Gonna let this rest for a minute. Let that seam adhere to itself. I have prepared my banneton with the rice flour. I've coated it in there. But as a safeguard, a precaution, I'm going to cover the top. So what we need to do now is get this into the banneton, seam side up. And it looks beautiful. But you see all this exposed chocolate. I'm gonna tighten this, make it a tidy package or a tight loaf. Gonna just bring this in, and I'm gonna keep pushing this chocolate in. The chocolate on the bottom isn't so bad. It's at the top where it'll burn. So I want to make sure this is all closed in. We're going to let this proof in this basket for a little bit. It looks beautiful. I'm going to give it another coating of the rice flour. Oh, seam that. Now we're going to let this rest until it passes the poke test. See how stiff it is right now? That's still too stiff. Let's check this side. See how quickly it bounces back? We want to be able to push it in and let that indent stay in. So it's not ready. So we're going to cover it, and I'm going to just leave it here on the counter, and I'm not going to put it back into the heated dome. I want it to rest here on the counter at room temperature. So it's been about another hour, and that seam is still kind of coming apart a little bit. You can see it here. I'm just going to pinch it together, and then in the overnight, it'll fill out together. Still trying to push the chocolate, but as I said, I'm not so concerned about the bottom chocolate. It's the top chocolate, which we will see in the morning. But this is the poke test. If you push in your finger and it leaves a little bit of an indent and still springs back, that means it's proofed and ready for overnight cold ferment. So I cover it with a towel, Put it in a plastic bag, and then it's in the refrigerator overnight. And we will bake this in the morning and see how beautiful it looks. The following morning, after the overnight cold ferment, I put my oven on 500 with my Dutch oven inside. I like to have it preheated. For me, it makes for the best oven spring for the first part of the bake. The dough, here it is inside the plastic. I like to cover it with a towel so that it doesn't stick to the plastic. And it had beautiful growth overnight. Now with the Silpat, you can put the rice flour on it or not. I find that it doesn't really need it, so I'm going to eliminate it in this step. There is a little bit of residual rice flour on here, and I will keep that on. Just spread it around, but I'm not going to add any more. Beautiful form. I'm very pleased with that. I found I get the best results if I do a center split. This allows it to open and expand symmetrically, and it makes for easier shaped cutting after the bread is done. So let's do that. We'll start way over here and go completely across the top and down to the other side, right down to the mat. I like to put the blade on an angle to release that top hard edge. Now here is where the trick comes in, because now the chocolate is exposed. Put my light on. The chocolate is exposed now, and that has a tendency to burn, but that's the way it is. So we're going to put it in the oven like this. I put a rack in the bottom of my Dutch oven. It keeps the bread from burning on the bottom. So you could use foil pieces, foil rolls, or look for a round rack. I highly recommend it. So you can see that here are the chocolate pieces. Now those are gonna, with the high heat, those are going to melt and they might burn. That's just the nature of it. I haven't figured a way to avoid that. Maybe trying to not get chocolate so close to that side, but we're going to just go with it. Into the Dutch oven, which you won't be able to see in the shot. I'm going to put my rack in the bottom of the Dutch oven. You can have it in there for the preheat. I'm going to drop this right in. I'm going to leave it in the oven 20 minutes, lid on at 500. The moment we've been waiting for. Oh, look how pretty that is. Okay, so what I do now is I turn it down. I'm going to turn it down to 425. Because that's all the chocolate on top. I don't want it to burn. I just want it to stay looking like that. Oh, it's very exciting. 425 for 20 minutes. All right, it's done. I'm taking it out of the oven. It looks so pretty. I'm very pleased with that. There's only one little burnt spot here. I'm pulling it off. Pulling that little burnt piece off. That looks very nice. I lowered the oven to 400. I was worried. So I left it in there for the full 20 minutes at 400. I really didn't want that to burn. But how pretty is that? It looks great. We're going to put it on the wire rack and let it cool. See how nice that is on the bottom? It's just darker because it's chocolate, but it's not burnt. And this is why scoring it down to the bottom is really good. Look, because it's kept splitting on the bottom, rather there than on the side. So we're going to let that cool for at least an hour, and then we'll cut it open and see what that looks like inside. Okay, my kitchen is super bright today. We're going to cut into this chocolate sourdough. The exposed chocolate did get a little browned, but I think it's okay. Always use, well, I always use this serrated first to get through it. Oh, looks beautiful. Look at that. You can see the darker colors where the other chocolate, the chopped chocolate is melting. I would cut another slice. Since it's newly baked, I find it harder to cut when I switch over to a smoother knife. That was not a good cut at all. It gets easier to slice after it's baked, and I'm right-handed. I'm doing it left-handed. Okay, that's a terrible slice. Let's try to do better this time with my right hand. Cutting through the top. Messing it up. It's only been cooled for an hour, so I think it's easier after a little bit longer, but I wanted to do it for this experiment. Look at that. It's beautiful. So a lot of the chocolate's at the top. I'm going to experiment next time and suggest that if you do as well, to try to keep the chocolate towards the bottom end, the seam side. So I'm going to think about that next time. That's a tip, something to strive for in a new loaf. As you can see, the loaf came out, it rose beautifully, has a lovely crumb. Give it a try. It's decadent. You can use it. You could take this, slice it in half, put butter, grill it, peanut butter inside, and make a grilled peanut butter and chocolate bread sandwich. You could do chocolate bread pudding. You could make French toast with this. I think it's very versatile. So give it a try. Special occasion, gift, holidays. I probably make this every now and then. But for chocolate lovers, this is a great recipe. Check out my other videos on sourdough, trying to keep it as simple as possible. I have PDFs of these recipes on my blog post, which I'll have in the description, so you can print and they're easy to reference. Thanks for watching.